The dining car of the Crestline Meridian swayed gently. As it gathered speed through the last of the evening light, Carol Ames had just decided on the salmon. She was 43, a pharmacist from outside Columbus, traveling alone for the first time in years. Her mother's 70th birthday, a long weekend, a train ticket she'd bought impulsively because she was tired of airports. The dining car was handsome in the old way, with white linens and narrow windows, and the kind of amber light that made everything feel slightly ceremonial. About half the seats were filled. A couple near the window shared a bottle of wine. A man in a blazer read a newspaper. The steward, a white man with close-cropped hair and a name tag that read Warren, had seated Carol without a second glance, handed her a menu, and told her the kitchen would be ready in 10 minutes. She was reading the salmon description: cedar planked, a lemon caper butter, apparently excellent, when the door at the far end of the car opened. The man who stepped through was in his 70s, Carol thought. Maybe older. He wore a pressed charcoal suit, a white shirt, no tie. He moved with the deliberate steadiness of someone who had learned, over a long life, to navigate things that moved beneath him. He was carrying a leather satchel over one shoulder and a printed ticket in his hand, and he looked around the dining car with a calm, unhurried expression, the way a person looks when they are simply locating their seat. Warren was at the far end, arranging cutlery. He looked up, took in the man at the door, and came down the aisle. Not with the menu in his hand. Carol noticed he hadn't picked up a menu. "Can I help you?" The older man smiled. "I have a dinner reservation. First class car 9, Elias Odoms." Warren held out his hand for the ticket, glanced at it, and handed it back. "I don't see that name in the manifest for this seating. I booked through the main Crestline reservation line," Mr. Odom said. "3 weeks ago. Confirmation number is on that ticket." "I understand, sir." Warren's voice carried the specific flatness of someone who has decided the conversation is already finished. "But the dining manifest for first class doesn't reflect your booking. You're welcome to check with the service desk and coach and see if there's something available later." Carol looked up from her menu. She watched Mr. Odoms hold Warren's gaze for a moment. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't move toward the door. He held the ticket between 2 fingers and said, patience of a man who had answered a great many questions from people who hadn't done the reading. "I'd like to understand the process. Which manifest are you looking at? The printed seating sheet or the live reservation system?" Warren paused a half beat too long. "The seating sheet for this car." "Then I'd ask you to check the live system," Mr. Odom said. "My booking will be there." "Sir, if you'll just. I'll wait here." That was all he said. He didn't move toward a seat, didn't plant himself aggressively in the aisle, didn't raise his voice a single degree. He stood at the edge of the dining car with his satchel on his shoulder and his ticket in his hand and waited, composed and unhurried as a man waiting for a bus he knows is coming. Warren glanced once toward the galley, then back at the door. "I'll need to ask you to step back to." Carol set her menu down. She didn't plan it. She had, in fact, been actively not planning it. Reading the same line about cedar plank twice, telling herself it was not her business, telling herself she didn't know the full story, telling herself Warren might have a reason she hadn't heard. She was good at that. She knew. She had spent a long time being good at finding the other explanation, but she had watched 2 men get seated in the 10 minutes before Mr. Odoms arrived, and neither of them had been asked for a confirmation number, and she had been seated from a printed sheet with no check at all, and she had watched a man in a charcoal suit stand at the door of a car he had paid to eat in and be told, with a specific and practiced flatness, to go somewhere else. Something in her that had been content to look at a salmon description decided, with some finality, that it was done looking at the salmon description. "Excuse me," she said, not loudly. "I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I'm curious about something." She looked at Warren. "The 2 gentlemen who were seated before me, were their reservations verified against the system, or just the printed sheet?" Warren turned. His expression shifted into the careful neutral of someone recalibrating. "Ma'am, this is a separate." "I'm just asking about the process," Carol said, "because I came in after them and you seated me from the sheet without any verification at all. So I'm wondering what the actual verification procedure is." The man in the blazer with the newspaper had lowered it by an inch. The couple at the window table had stopped talking. A woman 2 seats behind Carol. Carol didn't know her, had never spoken to her. Black woman in her 50s with reading glasses, pushed up onto her forehead, said quietly and distinctly, "That's a fair question." A man across the aisle, white, somewhere in his 60s, in the kind of rumpled jacket that suggested a long trip, checked the system. Warren stood in the middle of the dining car with 4 pairs of eyes on him, and for a moment no one said anything. Then the door at the galley end opened, and a woman stepped through. She was tall, in a Crestline uniform, with a small silver pin on her collar that Carol didn't recognize the significance of yet. Her name tag read Delia Marsh, head of onboard guest services. She had, Carol realized, been in the galley the whole time. She looked at Warren, looked at Mr. Odoms at the door, looked at Carol, and took in the room in about 2 seconds. "Mr. Odoms," she said, "heard my name mentioned by the reservation system. Is that your confirmation number on that ticket?" He held it out. She read it, once, and turned to the service tablet mounted beside the galley door. Her thumb moved across the screen for approximately 5 seconds. "Right here," she said. "First-class dining reservation, car 9, confirmed 3 weeks ago, paid in full." She turned to look at Warren. Voice didn't change pitch or volume. "Warren, please go to the front service area and let Keisha know I've asked her to cover the dining car for the rest of this run." She said it the way she might read from a checklist, clearly and without drama, and in a way that left no room for interpretation. Warren said nothing. He walked past Mr. Odoms without looking at him, and pushed through the door at the far end of the car. Delia Marsh picked up a menu, walked to the window table, the best table in the car, where the last of the evening light was still painting the rolling Ohio farmland gold, and set it down. "Mr. Odoms," she said, "I'm very sorry for the wait, if you'll come this way." He walked the length of the dining car slowly and without hurry, and he didn't look at the people looking at him, and he didn't need to. He sat down at the window table, placed his satchel on the chair beside him, and picked up the menu. The couple at the wine table started clapping, softly, and the man in the blazer joined them. And then the woman with the reading glasses. And Carol found that she was clapping too, hands just moving, and the sound was quiet in the way that a full dining car is quiet at 40 miles an hour. Warm and enclosed and oddly private. Delia Marsh, passing Carol's table with a small nod that Carol understood entirely, said, "We'll be bringing Mr. Odoms his first course in a few minutes. Can I get you anything while you wait?" "I'm fine," Carol said. "Thank you." Shh. She sat for a moment with the salmon description in front of her, and found she was no longer thinking about it. She was thinking about the way he had stood at that door, not moving toward a seat he hadn't been offered, not leaving a car he had every right to enter, just standing there in his charcoal suit with his ticket and his satchel, and a patience that had clearly been practiced over a very long time, a patience that did not require anyone else to witness it, that simply existed because it had to. She had put her menu down, that was all. One question. And then 4 voices. And then a woman with a silver pin who checked a screen for 5 seconds and said, "Right here," in the tone of someone who had found what they expected to find. She thought about how close she had come to not putting the menu down, about the 20 seconds she had spent staring at a cedar plank salmon description while she made up her mind, about the men who had been seated before Mr. Odoms and hadn't been asked a thing. She didn't feel heroic. She felt, if she was honest, a little ashamed of the 20 seconds, and aware, in a way she hadn't been when she boarded the train, of all the times she hadn't put the menu down. A steward named Keisha came through the galley door, stopped at Mr. Odoms's table first, took his order with a warmth that made the transaction feel, Carol thought, like a small act of restoration. Later, after dinner, after the dining car thinned out and the Ohio night pressed black against the windows, she passed his table on the way back to her seat. He was looking at the dark out the window with his hands folded on the tablecloth, and there was nothing urgent or agitated in his face, nothing that said the evening had cost him anything he hadn't already spent. He glanced over as she passed and gave her a single nod, not grateful, exactly, not theatrical, just one person acknowledging another, the nod of a man who has been right about the bus all along. Carol nodded back and walked to her seat, and the Crestline meridian moved through the dark toward morning, and she didn't sleep for a while. The following morning, the line's regional guest services supervisor, reached by Delia Marsh before the train arrived, issued a formal written apology to Mr. Odoms and opened a complaint pattern review on the dining car's seating records for the prior 90 days. Warren Holt was removed from onboard service pending that review. The Crestline Meridian's training materials were updated within 60 days, require live system verification before any dining reservation could be declined. Mr. Elias Odoms spent 41 years teaching 7th grade history at Lakeview Middle School. He retired in 2019 with a hallway named after him. He was on his way to visit his daughter. He arrived as he had planned the next morning.